A very good evening to you. Welcome to Family Matters. Now, tonight, we have one of those hot topics that sometimes many of us parents don't know how to handle, or we shy away from it, or we ignore it conveniently, but it is something we need to discuss. Tonight, it's all about sex education. How do you break this information down to your children? Who should do it? Is it your responsibility? Is it somebody else's responsibility? Those are the nitty-gritties we want to talk about on tonight's show. I have an able panel of guests in studio this evening to help us navigate through this discussion. We'll begin by introductions with you.
Good evening. My name is Shiron Degwa. I'm an urban planner by training, but practicing transportation planning. I'm a mom, I'm a wife, and apart from that, I'm also a mommy blogger of Our Mom Kenya.
Great. Good to have you. Karibu.
Thank you so much.
Yes.
Thank you so much. I'm Anne Kioko. I work with Citizengo as a campaigns manager for Africa. And we are a non-profit that deal with in promoting life, family, and religious liberty across the world. But the manager for African campaigns.
Karibu.
Thank you so much.
Yes.
Good evening. My name is Stephen Kigwa. I am a father, husband, and author, motivational speaker, life coach, and a trainer.
Wow.
Yes.
Those are many hats. Simpatia moja.
I just try to compress a few of them. I have many.
Okay. Karibu, good to have you.
Santi.
Yes.
Thank you. My name is Tanya, and I'm here to just represent the voice of the youth.
The voice of the youth.
The voice of the youth.
Very important.
Yes.
Good to have you on the show.
Thank
Let me begin by asking, whose responsibility is it to teach our children about their sexuality?
I think it's the parent. It should start there. As a parent, you have the responsibility to give the first-hand information to your children, to train them on what is good, and tell them the truth, no matter how hard it is to tell them. Of course, sex education is not something that is easy to convey. It's even hard to start the discussion. But I think it's a responsibility of a parent to tell the child as early as possible. I think even from 0 to 2 years, they can even learn something about sex education. Okay. So it doesn't have to be rocket science. It's very easy, but it's step by step. Telling them age-appropriate truth. As they proceed, you can go on adding more details. But I think it's very important for a child to hear that information at home before they can learn it from their peers and internet. Because if you don't tell them, somebody else will, and you don't want your child copying what they learn from school or from the internet, because the internet is very noisy and loud. So for you to control, you need to at least be the first person to tell them about that.
Okay. Is this something that dad should initiate, the mom, or combine effort?
I actually like the term you use, James, when you say sexuality. I personally don't like talking about it in terms of sex education. I would rather it is called sexuality. You are teaching them about sexuality.
Yes.
And like my colleague Penina has mentioned, actually, this is something that's a conversation that the parents should begin. And the father, being actually the lead, should be the one actually to initiate this discussion. But it may not happen as easy as we are putting it here, because the way we have been raised, the African context, men especially don't even affirm their girls or their boys, telling them, I love you. So how will they even talk about sex? So it's very difficult. But as for me, actually, what I did is I made sure that I actually started the conversation, and then I let the girls deal with the mother. But I talked to my boy about sexuality, what to expect. And I actually said, look, I was a boy like you. If you need to learn anything about sexuality, I'm the person you should talk to, because I have first-hand experience and I can teach you.
Okay.
Yes.
Is it that we're embarrassed about sex?
Well, the African culture, it's not. I think sex is really more of sacred when it comes to the African culture. People say it's taboo, but no, I like to say they take it as sacred, something divine, something that should be consummated only in marriage. And I think that's how we are brought up as Africans, and I think I'm proud of that. And for example, I come from the Kamba society. Let me just use my own tribe. And I know that we have a men's, like a meeting in the evening. There's a seat for the dad outside there. And he goes there with the boys, and they have a conversation. And the mother sits with the girls inside the kitchen, and they talk and have the conversation. And I think that's how it should happen. Telling kids that when you have sex, there's this consequence, and bring them up as responsible, adults, responsible teenagers, knowing that if you do this, there's a consequence, and there's need to be responsible, and sex. You can live without sex until marriage. Abstinence is cool. Such kind of conversations should be happening.
Okay.
Right from the family setup, from the household to the to the extended family, including even the church should also be having that conversation, but not the extreme stuff. Maybe we can talk about that later, because I know there is extreme stuff that is being introduced to our children. Yeah, but there's need for that proper sex education.
Okay.
Sex talk. Yeah.
She's talked about having this conversation. She's talked about the dad having the seat outside, and speaking for the young people. Do we have time? Do we even have the time as parents to engage with the young people?
Well, I'd like to introduce the topic of, first of all, honestly speaking, the reality is things have changed. I didn't grow up with a father in the home. A lot of my friends, even guys, there's no father in the home. And even the parents that are there, they're busy and they're doing a lot of things. So when you say responsibility, the word even responsibility as parents has changed, because we don't have the parents home as much. Most people in my eyes right now come from single parent homes. And so I would think that as a parent, if you're a single mother, let's say you are a single mother and you have a son, and maybe it's uncomfortable, I would think maybe you'd go to an uncle or someone you feel, if you're shy, because I know some mothers are a bit shy to talk to their sons, but you look to the next person who would relate to your child in that manner. If you cannot, I think it would be wise to just say, okay, me mtoto wangu, I can't, but I know someone. You always know your son or your daughter is close to someone, so you can have that conversation with this person. How about you talk to my child about, and you give them guidelines. I don't want this, but even you can sit down, you and this person, because ignoring it is not going to help. They'll learn from school, they'll learn from internet, they'll learn from, you don't even need a TV anymore. Even when you just go on a matatu nowadays, there's so much sexuality everywhere.
Oh yes, even walking in the streets.
Yes, and this is not even for young, like adults. We are talking about even children.
Yeah.
Yes. The control the society had for children to find out things at a certain age is no longer there.
Talking about children, even when we look at the family setup and you have this child, and this child is beginning to grow and to develop, even when it comes to the private parts, we don't even tell them the proper name. Does it begin, because if we're talking about sexuality, and I love the fact that you've brought up the whole issue of not sex education, it's their sexuality. So if we are talking to our kids about their sexuality from that early age, that you can't even teach them what their sexual organ is called. We give them funny names. Usijisike kwa susu. What is susu? Is that the place we are supposed to begin? I don't know what do you think?
That's where sex education starts. That's why I said in my earlier statement, I said that start teaching your children about these things as early as 0 to 2 years. They may be so young to understand, but there's what they can understand at their level. For a boy, 1.5 years, they'll start maybe touching their private parts. When you touch a girl the same, and you need to tell them, okay, this is called a penis and not susu. When you tell them that as they proceed on with age, between 3 and 5, tell them, okay, this is used for passing the urine. For girls, it's different, maybe because by then they'll have a sister who they have noticed it's different from theirs. So start telling them, okay, for the girls, it's different. As they proceed from the age of 9 to 6, now you can now go deeper. the reproductive system, how the whole biology happens, and go on advancing as the age progresses. And you being the first one, telling them the truth. I love truth because it doesn't change. Once you tell them it's a penis, it will never change.
Yeah.
And they'll always trust you as long as you always tell them the truth. Imagine if you lie to them and then they go to a neighbor, tell them, okay, oh, your mom told you it's called susu. No, it's actually called this. And from there, the baby start questioning you how much you know about these things. And they will actually shy from asking in the future. So I think it's very good to be honest, even from body parts, and then progress on, start this conversation early by telling them what, the right words for each part. Yes.
Do you agree? Do you have another thought?
I think to some extent I agree, but I also beg to differ on a number of things. Okay, one, you see, even as we talk about sexuality of the children and teaching them about their sexuality, which we're now calling sex education, it is not just about the sexuality we are teaching them, because if you do not cultivate what I call relational capital, so that the children can learn to listen from you, and you have a relationship with them, if you do not cultivate that relationship when they are young, as they grow, so that you're able to teach them in a conversational way, you will definitely find it difficult to bring the topic on their sexuality and discuss with them.
Yeah.
But having said that, I'm also looking at it from another perspective, because there is what personally I would think that there are some words I wouldn't expect you to be speaking openly and publicly because of the sacredness, like unsaid, with which we try to attach to that. The same way I don't teach my children to tell me that I'm going to the toilet. There's some manners, some etiquettes, I'm going to the washroom. So even when it comes to teaching them sexuality, of course you don't want to teach them in a manner that they are going to embarrass you in public by telling them, now this is penis, and then that's what they're going to talk. Of course you teach them those things, but of course you have got your own code names in the house that you use. Yeah. That's what I would say.
Okay.
Yeah,
yes.
I tend to agree with him. It's called euphemism. I mean, you don't go to the extremes of the words just because you want to do it right. She talked about a child of 0 to 2 years. You should start conversations. Is the child supposed to be suckling or learning how to talk, or should they be talking about such kind of extreme things? I believe our system, especially here in Kenya, for example, is structured in a manner that it prepares the children very well, and we should allow the Ministry for Education, for example, because I know there's life skills. When you go to primary school, you're introduced to some of these things, slowly by slowly, not extremely. And at some point, when you are mature enough, when you're 13 and you're a teenager and you have, your body parts have started changing. For example, the girls, they change in their bodies, and there's so much that happens in a girl. And this is taught in the biology also. But also this conversation that is taught in biology should also happen where? At home, at the parents' setup. And also,
I'm just thinking with the kind of society we live in today, and maybe you can tell us, the kind of society we live in today, the kind of information that is available, and the kind of exposure that we have, 13 for me is too late.
It's too late. It's too late.
By the time a child is 4, 5, they can tell you about sex because they've been watching things on TV.
Yes.
They've been watching stuff on your phone. So we have to begin somewhere.
Yeah, I agree with you. And here we are talking to them when they're small about, we introducing to them slowly about responsibility, about, this happens, and if it does happen, you need to do this and that. I mean, responsibility and consequences. And when you're a teenager, there's a lot that is happening to you. You cannot avoid this discussion about sex and all that. So that's when you begin introducing the hard stuff. About sex and everything about it. And at this point, you're mature enough to even have this conversation, because even the girl is now a lady, no longer a girl. A boy can see they're changing, their voice is breaking, they're growing beards, and you can start having this real deep conversation. But at the age of 4, I would really differ. You don't need to introduce this hard stuff at the age of 4, at the age of 5. Because what we'll be doing at that time is like sexualizing them, And
but the society is already sexualizing them.
Let me give some practical tips on exactly what I do and I did with my children. When they get to the age of about 3 years, when they begin to talk they can converse. This is what I would ask my children. I would ask them, are you a boy or a girl? And I would, if, like, for example, my last born now is turning 7 years, she would tell me, when she was 3, she would tell me, I am a girl. And I would say, no, you're a boy. And she would say, no, I'm a girl. And then I would begin there and I would ask her, so what's the difference between a boy and a girl? And then I started that conversation that way, so that I tell them now the difference between you and a boy is A, B, C, D. So I think that is what Anne is talking about. You don't bring the hard stuff at that age, but you need to start the conversation at some place, because if you don't and you wait when they are teenagers, it's already too late.
Fine.
Yes.
But my concern is there's a lot of exposure.
Yes.
I mean, I've had 3-year-olds, 4-year-olds using the F word.
Yes.
They picked it up from somewhere. So when they ask you what does that mean, what do you tell them?
If I can just throw in my opinion.
Yeah.
I think I understand where they're both coming from, where you want to shelter your child at, you want to keep their innocence. But part of the problem with our society right now, keeping them in that innocent stage can allow someone to take advantage of them without them being able to talk to you about it, because you never had that conversation. Because nowadays, there's cases where children are, being abused, honestly.
Yeah.
And it's happening everywhere, and no one talks about it. And in most cases, the mothers, the fathers, everyone is just, they blame other people, but honestly, you're also part to blame, because if you told your child, if someone touches you here, if someone does this, it means this, it's wrong, blah, 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 because they won't even know it's wrong. Okay, maybe a child can know, but the way to communicate to a parent, you have not established anything there. So it is okay to keep that innocence, but you have to protect your child. So you have to tell them something.
James, Tanya has made me remember something. And I refer back to my own experience bringing up my own children.
Yeah.
When I started talking to them and I would ask them, are you a boy or a girl? And then they would tell me they are boys, or for the boy, it's the firstborn, it's a boy, and the girls, they would tell me I'm a girl. Then the next thing I would go is exactly what Tanya is talking about. These are your private parts. Do not allow anybody, if it is not your mother or a doctor, even me as a father, I was telling them, telling my girls like that.
Yeah.
No one should touch you. Should touch your chest, touch your private part. These are private parts. Don't allow anyone. If anyone does that, report to me or tell the teacher. So we need to have that conversation. You need to tell them something about that.
Yes. And that's really what I was concerned about, because, I mean, I've seen situations where a lot of parents are using gadgets to babysit their children. Yeah, like now over the December holidays last year, the kids were home for 2 months, and some parents had gone into panic. What do I do? What do I do? And so your child is home the whole day. They're in primary school. They're at home the whole day. You have Wi-Fi. You have no idea what they're accessing. And so you haven't set the right foundation for them.
Yes.
Yeah, and they're in this sea of www, accessing all manner of things.
Yeah, and I'm happy with the recent step by the government. I think it's the Ministry of Education, where they decided to ban pornography and all that, because there's, like you said, in the internet there's a lot of stuff that they can access to. And even of late, there's even the controversial sexuality curriculum, like the comprehensive sexuality curriculum. When you go to the website, you'll find it. It's called Word Starts With Me, and you'll think they're learning something good. But what is Word Starts With Me teaching people? You can be a lesbian when you're 4 years. You can be a gay when you're 4 years. That's why we need to control what they are learning. And if you see your child accessing such kind of stuff, we need to monitor. I don't even know why children should be having phones or
even access to Wi-Fi.
Even access to Wi-Fi.
Yes.
I think
The world has changed.
No. I think as a parent,
has
the
changed.
buck stops with you. You are the one who controls the environment in which your children actually go, especially in your own house. It's
Very
not true out there, but in your house, I set the rules.
Very true. But your children don't live in your house their whole life.
Yes.
Yeah.
That's true. But in my
Your
house,
children
I teach them.
visit.
Yes.
That's the thing.
Yeah, but
your children visit. You see, one of the things I did with my children, because I'm a movie guy, and so I taught my kids from a very early age what kind of movies are acceptable and what kind are not, and why they are not acceptable. Yeah? And the rationale I gave them is that if it's not good for the kids, the adults will not watch. And there's one time my mom visited and she wanted to watch one of these Mexican soaps. And my son was, I think, 4 years. And he refused with the remote. Completely. Until I came home. And my mom was furious. And I told my mom, that's just the standard we have in this home. Simple. And years later, my mom and dad come visiting. And my dad says, hey, ile kipindi yetu imeanza. And my mom laughs and says, umesahau tuko kwa nyumba ya pasta. So that lesson passed. So even today, I don't have to be a watchman to see what my son is watching or what my daughter is watching, because I set a foundation from very early. And they know this is wrong. Why? Because of this and this and this and this. Even when it comes to music, when they're not sure, they always ask, hey dad, your song ni secular ama ni gospel? Able to skize hizo words. So they have like a blueprint of what to look out for, which I feel is what sometimes as parents we don't give our children, because when it comes to issues to do with sex, the common message is that it is bad. And I have a problem with that. If it's bad, why are we doing it as adults? Because they know we do it. So how should we communicate? Which is what I want to get this conversation into. How do we practically communicate to our children? What do we tell them at what age?
Yeah, I think you're right. And first, as parents, like you have spoken, you need to be a role model to your own children, because you don't tell them, there's no way you can communicate what you're not practicing. Most of the parents that we have in the 21st century are the club people. They go, they dance, and they come home drunk, and they've left their children with the maids, and what they care about is their own, their own happiness. And you cannot talk to a child when you're behaving like that. You need to be a role model. And I think it should be a wake-up call for all the parents. If they're not taking responsibility of talking to their children, the time is now. Otherwise, the society will take it up for them. I mean, and the society is not so lenient. There's a Swahili saying that says, asiyefunzwa na mamake yafunzwa na ulimwengu. So this is what we are almost going to. And if we don't want to have this responsible sex conversation, there are some people who will come and teach them for you. If we fail to talk to our children, they'll fall for that, because it seems like it's an easy way out. If, for example, I'm not able to abstain and wait until marriage, for the right time for sex, and I see the shortcut, I'll go for it. But if we bring those proper values, because I've not seen anybody who has died for being a proper citizen, a properly behaved person. If you do something right, you always go right, because shortcuts have never helped. And that's my thought.
So to the dad,
yes,
because this is something you've done before, because the question that dad at home may be asking, or that mom at home may be asking, is how do I begin this conversation and what do I tell them?
If they have not already started the conversation when the children were young, they have failed as parents.
Okay.
So the conversation needs to begin. You see, you need to connect with a child, whether it's a boy or a girl, when they are young, so that you can always talk to them and they can always talk to you about anything. So you need to be that, what I was calling relational capital. But the problem is that most of the parents are not there, like she was saying. They are not available. And children spell love presence. But today's parents, they spell love as presents. So we need to create time for the children to have a conversation. In fact, every child, you should have at least 30 minutes every day with each and every of your child individually. Every single day. That's the bare minimum. But most of the parents, they leave early when the children are sleeping. They come back home late at night. If they dingo clubbing, the children are already, asleep and stuff like that. So I think the parents are failing, and we are living in a highly sexualized society. In fact, I was reading some statistics that shocked me, that in a year, our children are exposed to about 1,000 times of sexual images, either through music videos, television, or just in the streets.
Yes.
And that's where the Kenya Film Classification Board should come in. I mean, we need to really censor what is available on internet, because...
How do you censor the internet?
There's a way you can classify what is to be watched at what time, and
the internet. I don't think you can put cuffs on the internet.
It's hard. It's doable, but I think what can be controlled, because if you go home, okay, you may refuse to have the Wi-Fi, for instance, in your own house, but at least you have the TV. TV has that exposure. We have like these adverts of condom running. You know, when we were growing up, we used to have Nimechil advert. It used to be like our slogan when growing up. Right now, condom advert is what is running. That's a lot of exposure already.
They come during dinner time.
So, yeah, it comes in any other time.
Exactly. Advertising abortions.
Exactly. It happens all the time. So, I think what you can do as a parent, like you said, be the blueprint. Yes. Tell them the right information at the right age, and creating that trust as early as possible. And having these conversations, you don't have to create it in a very special way that, okay, please come here, let's have this sex talk. Do it when you're doing normal things. I think that already makes it very easy. Or when a question pops up.
In fact, it comes very naturally. When you're just doing your normal things.
Yeah,
you
like
just like anything, like you're shopping or anything, just talk.
Yes.
I talk with my children, I say, look at that girl, how is she dressed? You know, like that. And then you bring such conversation.
Teachable moments.
Yes.
So supposing here you are with your 6-year-old and she asks, Mommy, where do kids come from? What do you tell her?
I think that's what I talked about, age-appropriate truth. It's telling them the truth, but what is appropriate for their age.
Yeah.
If it's a 6-year-old, I cannot be able to explain so much about the sperm and the egg, but maybe tell them, I would, for instance, tell my baby that, I don't know.
Yeah. You see, I'm finding it difficult to explain, because a 6-year-old will not understand all those biology things.
They will not understand.
I think there's time for everything. I think that's my slogan.
Yes, there's time for everything. But you see, I want us to, you see, the problem I'm having is this. We are circling around the airport, but we are not landing this plane.
Yeah.
Let's land.
Yeah? It's like we are afraid to say things, and that's what's landing us into the problems we have with our children. So it's a specific question. It's a 6-year-old, your daughter, and she asks you, Mom, where do kids come from? What am I supposed to tell her?
Okay, this is what I would tell her. That a man, because at least I'll have told them there's a difference between a boy and a girl. So I'll tell them that a man has this kind of egg, and the girl has this kind of
no, that is not the even at class 6 they have not even started being taught biology. I think tell them what they can understand at their age. What is that?
I think
if I can try.
Yeah.
Normally, I think any time when, for my experience, when a child asks a 6-year-old, normally they've heard about it. So they ask even when maybe the mom was pregnant or something, or a neighbor or something. So they just say the belly. Then that is it. They come from a mom's belly or something like that. And then how? Yeah. Because me personally, I was told they came from a supermarket, and that was how that story ended. And then later on, when I asked again, it remained a supermarket. So for your, as you said, euphemisms, those can help. Well, you don't have to even say. I mean, people say, "Oh, they come from heaven." You just make it look nice, and then
as long as whatever you are passing to this child is responsible enough not to sexualize them. Because the problem with what I have is the conversation we'll have, and then instead of bringing them up as better citizens, as better people, as better parents, as better future wives and husbands, we are going to start sexualizing them. And when you sexualize children, what do we have? We start having, 13-year-old mothers.
We already have, not we will start having. We have 9-year-old mothers. We have 13-year-old mothers. We need to take a short break. But I'm just thinking, I think as Christians, sometimes we live in a bubble.
Yeah.
If we think 6-year-olds have no idea what's happening, I personally think we are living in a bubble.
Yeah.
Because the kind of 6-year-olds and 7-year-olds and 8-year-olds they're interacting with out there are giving them information that if you had, you would drop dead. That's what I think. In my interactions, that's what I've come to realize. We're taking a short break. We'll be back. Keep it family. Welcome back to Family Matters. Tonight, I think I should also say we need a fire extinguisher in the studio. We're talking about sexuality and how to break this topic to our children. And men, we have some work to do. There's something you are sharing as we were taking the break, and I think it's important for you to share it again.
Yes, I was just mentioning that sometimes as parents you focus so much on what you're doing at home, and you want to create an environment that's, you want your child to know from home, but sometimes it actually doesn't matter what is happening at home if your child doesn't have the information anyway. For myself, at home there was very conservative Christian. There wasn't anything really that you would say would corrupt me at home because I was an only child. But then when I went to school, there's so many kids, and you can't tell your kid, don't play with that kid because of blah, blah, blah. Your kid decides and chooses friends and all of that, and you'll never really know what your child is finding out from school. So I found out a lot, good, bad, from school, from friends, sometimes not even school, friends, just everywhere. And so because I didn't really have much at home to balance out, because no one, the only advice I was given was, it's not for you, don't do it. It was just not talked about. I had to figure it out on my own. And so for your kids, you think you're protecting them by not telling them the whole truth, but they're going to find it out eventually. And they will find out so much that you have to realize as a parent that it's your job to let them know, but you have to tell them what you want them to know, because they'll find out regardless. There's nothing you can do that can guard them from everything in this world. It's impossible. Absolutely. Even not Wi-Fi, nothing. They will find out from people, they'll talk to. And now information is just, they'll everywhere. Just go outside, play with someone's kid, and there it is. So it is up to you to decide, are you going to talk about it, or are you just going to shy away? You have to be bold.
James, allow me to throw a comment on what Tanya has just mentioned.
Yeah.
Because she has talked about how we try as parents to try to protect our children, and of course they will still end up learning from their friends, whether in the neighborhood, in the estate, at school, and all that. This is my take. You do not protect your children by withholding information. You protect them by empowering them with the right information.
I like that.
Yes.
That's
how you protect them.
Yeah.
So, and you see, like Tanya said, you cannot control every environment. You cannot control who your children are meeting out with. But you can create an enabling environment where your children have a listening space. They can come talk to you about something.
Yeah.
There's something I do in my house. I actually ask my children to bring their friends to the house.
Yes.
Because I want to know who are these friends. And then I'm able to survey and then teach them after they see, now I heard you guys talk about this. This is not right because of ABCD. I may not control their friends, but I can help them learn how to, sort of see what they need to take in and what they need not to take in.
Wow.
Yes.
I think I would be correct to assume that a good number of parents don't fall into that space where they began having these conversations with their children from a young age like you have. I think the majority are those who find themselves in a space where now their kids are becoming teenagers, like you were saying. They are going through all these transformations in their bodies and they don't know how to handle with it, and that's the place now we are beginning to panic. Okay, so what do I begin to tell them at this time?
Yeah, and also we need to embrace the idea of it takes a village to bring up a child. I think that's what we as Africans have been practicing. I grew up in the village myself, and besides my mom, there's the neighbor just across the road, there's the school, there's the church, there's, all these people surrounding me. Because the parents, you cannot single-handedly bring up the child. This child has to go to school at one day. On Sunday, or those other services, they have to go to church. What are they being taught? So everybody that is coming across this child should exercise their responsibility. If it's on television, what are you telling these children? What is being advertised? What is being shown? What is being watched at what time? There are some people also who are sitting on the other desk. They are watching your failures, and they are taking advantage of this. And what they are teaching these children, primary and high school, is really very nauseating. And they are teaching, for example, at age 4, you are sexual. You are sexual from birth. And at age 4, you can experiment whether you are a boy or a girl. For example, if she's a girl, and you can be told, just experiment whether you can be on the other opposite sex, or you can be told to experiment whether you are transgender, all those things. And they're also capitalizing on these failures to introduce abortion as a right, contraception as a right, and at the end of the day, they are going to be kicking the parent away. They're going to erode the parental responsibility. So this is not what we want. We need to know what is the proper content, at what age, and like I said, we should see every environment that the children interact with is safe and secure.
Okay, let's talk about one issue that is rampant, but we hardly talk about, and I believe it is so because not only is it affecting our children, it's also affecting us as parents. And that's the whole issue of pornography. So here you are, you discover your daughter, you discover your son, is into pornography. What do you do? And I know they are there because they send me SMSs on my show. I don't know how to deal with this. Pray with me. Man, I've tried to stop this thing. It's like it's taken over my life. So as a dad, as a mom, here you are and you discover your 12-year-old, your 13-year-old, is watching pornography. How do you handle that situation?
I think that's a very, very pertinent matter in the society today. And when we were just talking about this thing, and we were talking about pregnancy, it sounded like we are only talking about the girl. It's like the boy, because the boy doesn't get pregnant, stuff like that.
Yeah.
But statistics show that most of the boys are the ones actually who get exposed so much to pornographic things, more than girls. And I remember one time I wrote an article on that matter, because images have got the power to live with somebody for the rest of their lives. Yes. Because images are the ones that determines the ideologies people have. The ideologies determine the identity. The identity determines the expression they give out. So I think if you discover your son or your daughter has watched pornography, they've been watching because it becomes like
addiction.
It's an addiction, actually. It's worse of even than alcohol. The first thing you need to do is actually, you will not go by punishing them. You need to sit down with them and explain to them exactly what they are doing to their own selves in life, how much they are destroying their sexuality, who they are, their perception, their image, and how that opens a door for them to be morally loose. Because that is actually why some men end up not being able to be faithful to their partners, because of they want to have that woman they saw on pornographic things. And that doesn't work. So as a father, as a mother, you need to sit down with your son and show them the consequences of what they have gotten themselves into. It will take some bit of time to undo what has already done, but you need the goodwill of the church, you need the pastors, you need the counselors, you need many people to help you in that.
I love the word you've used,
yes.
Consequences, because it's brought back something. When I was a youth pastor quite a number of years ago, we invited our young people for Acacia.
Yes.
And we told them, this is not Acacia for prayer. Come, we are going to watch movies the whole night. And they came in huge numbers. And there was one video. I'm still looking for that video. There's a video that was shot at Kenyatta National Hospital, and it was on sexually transmitted diseases. And that's the movie we showed. And we talked to them about sexuality and the consequences of premarital sex. And we told them about, okay, there's the pleasure part. That one is there. We will not deny it's not there. But now, this is what you're opening up yourself to. Whether it is teen pregnancy, STDs, what. And till today, I meet some of the young men and young women who are part of that youth group. Now they're married. They still remember. Because they said no one had ever talked to us about the consequences. And I feel sometimes as parents, we fail to give a full picture. Like I said earlier, we just say it's bad, don't do it. Ni tabia mbaya. And it ends there. But we don't explain, ni tabia mbaya kwa nini? How can it feel so nice? Na ni tabia mbaya.
Yeah, actually I remember when I was in high school during one of the parents' meeting, and I think the parents were told that some of their girls were actually using contraceptives. So my mom told, when we went home, okay, my mom was very open to this conversation, so I grew up knowing the consequences. So she told me, hey, okay, I had some people in your school already using family planning, but even if you don't get pregnant, you still have HIV and STDs, and she gave the whole ideas of the consequences, that fine, you may fear the pregnancy because everybody else will see that while you're pregnant, but there was issues that are associated with sex that is not just pregnancy. And I think that's why as parents, having these conversations and telling them the negative implication of each and every aspect is good. So I think also as parents, you need to start doing other activities. Can you keep your child busy during the holiday? When you left in the morning for work, what have they been doing? I know you leave the nanny has to do all the chores. Can you let your child do the dishes? Can you in the process, they get disrupted. When you keep them busy doing other things, even if you engage them in a football team, just let them do something, at least to take away some of that time. Because when they are, like they say, I don't mind this.
The devil's
workshop. So the moment you let them be so free, then you're creating that space. And remember, in a kid's life, there's never space. There's never a gap that will not be filled. So I think we also need to keep them very busy. And like he said, once you notice that your child is in those things, please see a counselor. You may talk to them, but a counseling will also do a lot.
She brought in the whole issue of contraceptives. If you introduce your children, your teenagers, to contraceptives, because this is a conversation that I've had with several people, and it's always one that we never agree. It's always heated. Should you introduce contraceptives to your children, teenagers, or is doing that sending a message that I'm giving you the permission to be sexually active as long as you use this?
Can I answer that,
yes,
please, because I know I'll be the only one on the
on
other
this side.
So, I just, before we even get to that, in this country, even before contraceptives, I like what you said, that growing up, the main focus is always on getting pregnant, but there's always also STIs, and that follows even after even after school, not just in school, even after school. A lot of people don't have a lot of knowledge about STIs. They're only worried about HIV. They don't know about all the little diseases you can still get.
Yeah.
But Kenya, unfortunately, is one of the leading countries on HIV infections newly. Yeah. And you ask yourself why. You know that how it's spread, so something's not adding up.
Yeah.
There are places like Holland where they start sex education very early, and they have the lowest rate, like teenage pregnancies. And should we say it's because of something else? But we have to be willing to try something new. Now on contraceptives, I would say, okay, you are worried you are giving your child the green light to go and have sex. But as we are sitting now, just because you see your child at home praying, washing dishes and all that, does not mean that they are not engaging. I think that people want, protecting yourself and thinking, oh no, my child can't do that, is being naive. You have to wake up, because the statistics are showing us that it is happening. Myself, when I was in high school years back, it was happening all around me. And probably the only reason I didn't fall in that is because someone talked to me and told me the truth. And because I was told the truth, maybe not only into contraceptives, but I think even by the time I was 18, 19, I was told, if you're going to have a long-term boyfriend, I was told this is what can happen. You shouldn't use these contraceptives because this can happen to you. This, even to tell someone P2. I heard of a case where a chick was using P2, I don't know, every 2 weeks. They don't even know. You have to, an educated introduction, not that you tell them you should use this. You tell them what it's about, because at the end of the day, it is happening. Preaching abstinence will not work. They will pretend they're listening, but when you're not there, it's happening.
Should we actually focus on telling them have more sex, or telling them, we are
We
feeling
have been telling them not
pieces?
to have sex, and they have been having sex.
Look here,
That is
we-
why
I think-
teenage pregnancy has gone up.
With all due respect, Tanya, we should focus on picking up our pieces and bringing ourselves together and focusing on doing the right thing. Like I said, there's no good in going for shortcuts, because it's happening, it should happen. Just like I can give you the issue of drug abuse. People are taking alcohol, even cocaine and everything. Just because they are doing it, should we say, hey, everyone, now it's time for you to take cocaine? No. What we do is rehabilitate those, we counsel them, and we show them the right path. Same thing with premarital sex. And when we are telling children have sex and use contraceptives, we don't know what we're exposing these girls. There's something that we need to tell our children. Contraceptives first, they fail. They're not 100%. Number two, when you're using a contraceptives and having sex, like you rightly said, there's STI, there's HIV, there's so many, like 6 STIs and STDs that cannot even be protected even by condoms themselves. So we need to tell them part of this truth. These contraceptives are also carcinogens. They have side effects. They have cancer, cervical cancer. This is a study by the American Institute of Cancer. They have side effects: cancer, breast cancer, cervical cancer, or ovarian cancer. We need to tell them there are side effects. And also, even many other things like adding weight, losing sexual appetite, everything that needs to be told about contraceptives. You can be a girl, you can be sexy, you can be, very beautiful, you can make your hair very well, but still be a virgin.
I want to get down to the practical because it's a message that I've had even in high school, but no one ever told me how to deal with the fire in my bosom, because it's there. Nobody told me how to deal, when I see this young girl in this dress and parts of me that should not be moving are beginning to move, how do I deal with that? Because I think sometimes we fail, especially within the youth groups in the church, to explain to our young people, give me some practical solutions. I'll never forget one time I was invited just to observe and to be a part of a youth camp that was happening, and they were talking about sexuality. And somebody asked a similar question. One of the young people in the panel asked a similar question. It was a panel of pastors and the young people, and somebody asked, how do I abstain? How do I deal with this and this and this? And the first pastor gave the typical answer, and he threw about 3-4 verses of what the Bible says and all that, and the young man is thinking, I know those verses, I've heard them many times, you haven't answered my question. The second pastor was a lady, and she was a single lady. And she took us back to campus, and she says, you know what, my friend, when you talk about masturbation, I know what you're talking about, because it's been my struggle throughout campus. And the room went silent. And she explained how she got out of it. And she was frank enough to say that, you know what, it's not like I'm out of the woods yet. Here I am, single woman. I have all these desires that I feel. And sometimes they're quite overwhelming. But this is how I've been dealing with them. And it's a one day at a time process. She finished and people clapped. And the pastor was to speak after her. The heat was on him. So what are these practical things we can tell our young people? Because we just tell them, abstain. But we don't tell them, when you feel like this, when this is going on, this is how you can deal with it.
There's something that Tanya actually mentioned that put me thinking. She said we need to tell the children the truth, which is actually what we do not do. We don't tell them the truth. But I think we need to ask ourselves, what is the truth about their sexuality? Going back now to your question, I remember I think last time when I was taking my son to school, he is in high school, and I started having a conversation, and we started talking, and I talked to him a lot because he also asked me a lot of questions. And he asked me the same question, so what do I do? Because everybody seems to have a girlfriend, so what about me? What do I do? And this is exactly what I told, because I was taught this. I was fortunate enough to have mentors who taught me. And I told him, I asked him, so do you want to have a girlfriend? He was like, how do I answer? He said, yeah. So I said, so do you want to have a girlfriend to get married? And he said, of course not. I said, good. If you are not planning to get married, This is the advice I gave my son, which I would give to the parents as well to give to their sons. I said, socialize with girls, but don't specialize, because you are not getting married tomorrow.
Yeah.
Then the next truth, which we don't tell parents, which actually we don't tell children, which you actually highlighted, is the fact that between the ages of 14 and 18, boys especially are their highest in their sexual, exactly.
Yes.
And here's what I told my son. I said, look, I was like that, and I was there one time. There is a way in which you can dissipate the energy. And I did give him the stories that we used to be given, when you feel like that, go take a shower. No. I told him, this is what you need to do. I said, you can have intimacy with the opposite sex without having coitus. Exactly, I was expecting that. What happens is that boys want to feel that they are men by trying to woo a girl, because that is what they have seen in society. That's what they have seen in the media and stuff like that. But this is what I teach my boy. Now, you need to specialize, you need to socialize, do not specialize. So that will give you the ground to be able to be intimate, because we think the word intimate means to actually go to bed and to somebody. That's not, intimate is to relate, to connect with someone. And you get to connect with the opposite sex, you get to know what they think about their sexuality, what they think about the sexuality of the boys, if they are girls, and stuff like that. The next thing I taught my boy, which is actually the truth that is never taught anywhere, I told him, now listen, my son. Every girl is born with their virginity clustered by a thin film of blood the doctors call hyphen. And they have discovered it has nothing but blood vessels, blood capillaries. And every girl is supposed to stay like that until the day she gets married. And when she gets married, the man who marries her is the one who breaks that hymen. And the blood is shed. And blood represents two things, life and death. That means you are breaking this hymen, committing yourself into a covenant of life until death. And I was telling my son, make sure you protect the girl you claim to love, so much so that you will not even put her to your own sexual temptation. You protect her that much. And I went ahead and I said, look, every girl in their birth canal is protected by a bone called sacrum, which is a Latin word which means sacred. And sacred means belonging to God. That means no one is supposed to go through that direction, not unless they have already broken the covenant with the girl that they want to take them as their wife. So my son understood that. And he said, Dad, I have never had anyone talk to me about this. I will talk to the children, to my friends in school. When he came back after the time, he told me, you know what, Dad? I actually became a peer counselor. Now I'm teaching boys the same thing you wrote.
I know some of you dads are thinking, where can I get that guy who comes and talks to my son? That's really what I was hoping we can get to on this program. That we can get to the practicals. That this is what I do, this is how I do it. Now that's a boy. What about the girls? What do we tell our girls?
Yeah. Well, my approach has been emphasizing on chastity, and because with chastity there's it is multifaceted. It's not about abstinence. It's about purity of everything, purity of mind, purity of your body. You just want to do things in the right way, and I believe there's the right way of, for example, engaging in relationships. There's you become friends, then there are those stages, courtship, premarital counseling, until you go to the altar. I think if we focus on the right way of doing things, we can make it. And chastity has been a really lifesaver especially for me, because if you're thinking, because it starts with the mind. You cannot engage in something when you have not thought about it. It starts with the mind, and you avoid those circumstances that can lead you into, into things that you don't want to do when you are thinking in a pure way. And of course, get closer with your God. That's something I can say.
Do we talk to our children about this as a law? Because I feel many times we present it as a law, or do we build it in them as a value? Because now I'm trying to tie this whole conversation with religion or Christianity, because we are Christians. Do I because I feel like we present it as a law. Nikiwai kupata na kijana.
When growing up as a teenager, all my neighbors had boyfriends, and I used to be the outlier, the black sheep, because my mom had instilled those things, the values that abstinence is the way to go. that if you have a boyfriend right now, what are you going to do with him? How much can he actually do for you? And at some point, even in school, people discuss how they had, like after the holidays, they would talk about how they had sex, and I would be like, feel left out at some point, because yeah, it's normal to feel you don't belong to that group. And yeah, somehow there's that aspect of you being tempted, but because of the values that have been instilled in you, then you would always abstain. I managed to do that. I think I did my best to manage, at least not do it at the wrong time. But I think it's more of values that you instill into your children. They go a long way, because why do we have a lot of court cases and we have a constitution? Laws are there to be broken. Yeah. But if you have the values, then they go with you forever, for the rest of your life. That's why the teachings, like when you're in nursery school, there are those songs that you are taught. You still remember them. There are some sort of values. We're told that when you steal, you go to Satan, and when you don't steal, you go to heaven. So those are values. And that's how even in sex education, we are supposed to take it as if we're instilling values to our children, such that it's going to take them for the rest of their life. We're not just protecting them just within teenage and until before they get married, because we have a lot of sponsor thing nowadays. And who are sponsors? They're married men with daughters, age mates of the sponsee. The sponsees. But why is it still an issue? So I think it's more of instilling the values and also following the fruits of the Holy Spirit, self-control. That, you know what? Do not allow your body to take charge. Let me take charge. This is my body, this is my life, and I'm not going to let this body control me. What is right? Then I'll follow the values to direct me towards the right direction of abstinence. So for me, I still tell all the girls, please, can you have that advert back? We used to say chill, but right now it's condoms. I'm not against it, but I think we need to just talk about abstinence, because that's the right thing to do.
I think I'm against condoms, because they're not condoms, what are they protecting? Biblically, let me tell you one thing. You're supposed to have sex for two things: to procreate and for companionship, and they must not be separated. And that's why we limit sex. Sex must be, for it to be exercised properly, it must be in marriage, because that's why we are open to life. That's why you want to have intimacy with your wife, and your husband. But if you are using, when you're having it prematurely, that's when you use these condoms. And what do? They're breaking one of those things, that is intimacy. And secondly, they're not even defending you from anything. There are 6 STIs that cannot be protected by condoms. And also some of them are faulty. We have seen even recently them having to ban some of these condoms. I think they're just introducing shortcuts to everything, and they are affecting our children, our society.
Wow, I feel like we've just begun, but my producer loves showing me signs and wonders. We've run out of time. Asanteni sana. Thank you for coming. Thank you for sharing. Well, wazazi na watoto. We've run out of time for our show, but for that parent who's still thinking that, it's still a hard conversation to begin with my children. One of the things I've seen several parents from church doing is getting young people together, and inviting somebody to talk to them on your behalf, where you sit down with this person and you agree on the kind of information you want your children to be given. And because, they are bold enough to speak about it, you as parents are there, to support what they're doing and to rubber stamp it, and they speak to your children on your behalf. So if you are finding it hard to talk to your children, maybe that's a kind of setting you would want to get yourself into, so that at least your child begins to get the right information at the right age from the right people. This conversation hasn't ended. We'll pick it up again. Thank you for watching Family Matters. Have a great night.